Hello, everybody. My name is Jaime Ramirez Jr., better known in the circle as Chato. I just wanted to share with you guys my Jaime Ramirez authentic regalia, authentic Mexican centenario, and 5 sizes too big Jaime Ramirez bracelet. My father's story begins like so many other immigrant songs. The oldest of parents, Baltazar Ramirez and Enriqueta Ramirez Nava. My father didn't speak much of the time he spent growing up a poor boy in Gomez Palacio, Durango. When I was younger, I would ask him questions about his childhood, and he would just pucker his lips, shrug his shoulders, and respond, Pues no me acuerdo. I never thought much of it until my Uncle Henry told me that my father didn't like talking much about it. Now that I have experienced what it's like to lose my father at 42 years old, I can only imagine the devastation my father must have felt losing his father tragically at 14. How terrified he must have felt receiving that horrific news, and also to be faced with the crushing responsibility of having to care for his newly widowed mother and 5 younger siblings. My father would tell me stories of how my grandmother would reward him with tacos de frijoles con una cerveza after a hard day's work shining shoes, selling peanuts, or working at a brick factory as a teenager. How times have changed. With no foster homes, CPS, or welfare, my father and the Ramirez family were forced to do what they have become famous for: fighting. With minimal education and resources, my father, at just 20 years of age, picked up with mother and siblings in tow and moved to California, only to be stricken by the loss of his younger brother Roman and Balta Jr. shortly after. Marred by so many tragic losses, my father and the Ramirez family continued to persevere, forging an unbreakable family connection and forming his family unit. My father didn't teach us much with words or heartfelt speeches like the ones you see in the movies. He was severe and impatient and detested noise in his house. He had punishing eyebrows and terrifying roar of a voice. Growing up, I longed for him to speak anything at all, but he never would. Only the occasional prende la tele or his famous apágame la luz. I would ask my mother if he was angry, and in true Lupe fashion, she would just tell me that he was tired from working all day, and I would go to bed feeling disappointed and inadequate. Just work, eat, and sleep is all we ever saw him do Monday through Friday. Weekends we would get up at the crack of dawn and drive to Rosemead to see my grandmother and cheer my father on as he played handball or baseball, followed by what seemed like endless drinking, only so that my mother could drive us all home passed out. I remember my mother would sit quietly with us as the hours would pass, as her children would play or fell asleep until my father decided it was time to go. But we were always there together, his family unit. He taught us to love and care for one another because there was no other option. He helped develop our individual talents, but taught us the strength in unity. But most importantly, he taught us that by sitting in silence, we would find companionship in God. When I tell stories of my father, I am often met with disbelief. My father took the harsh lessons life had taught him and created a manuscript of life lessons spoken only through deed. An elegant simplicity devoid of excuses and triviality, but built on a foundation of truth, honor, discipline, accountability, and love of the grind. Something needs to get done? Pues chingale. How long will it take? Deja de hacerte güey. No nonsense, no excuses, and no mercy. Those of you who have had the distinct pleasure of working for him can relate. He would badger and criticize you endlessly while whistling and making up songs of insult to further harass you, all while munching on peanuts or his patented ice crunching. My brother still winces every time he hears someone chewing on ice. Everywhere he went, he commanded respect and radiated authority. People would jump at every grunt. The piercing hazel of his eyes, nestled under his trademark Ramirez cigar eyebrows, portrayed a confidence that only few would dare to cross. An authentic example of classic masculinity that we were all blessed to have witnessed in the flesh. My father had 4 children, but was a father figure to so many more. His generosity was only surpassed by his love for them all. He provided, protected, and presided over us like a shepherd does his flock. Whether it was opening his home or wallet to those in need, or buying a new car every year to demonstrate his support, he reminded us constantly that he was present and that we were always protected. He would buy peanuts and fruit like the ones he used to sell with a 20 and let the vendors keep the change with a cheerful "Pa las aguas, maestro." My father loved golf, baseball, boxing, watching classic Mexican movies in black and white, and much to my surprise, cheesy Spanish court chisme. He sang at the top of his lungs in the shower and was so proud of his amazing smile. He worked construction for A.W. Davies for over 40 years, installing drainage pipes all over Southern California, keeping the roads safe to drive on when it rains. He would involve us all in construction projects none of us were qualified to perform with tools I doubt are even legal to use anymore, and watch beaming with pride as he supervised enjoying a fruit or pastry. He would bring home pieces of leftover pipa and attempt to refurbish them into something like the time he blew up the driveway with his homemade horno pasar cabeza. Or who can forget the tronco that he chainsawed into a crude 50-pound stool that Mama used to place a maceta on so that he wouldn't feel bad. He would invite you over for lunch and casually ask you for help laying tile, patching drywall, or mix some cemento para poner un poste tú que estás fuertote, and leave you out there to finish it all alone while he had seconds on dessert. And as he aged and I ventured into the world, I got to know him closely as a man. I came to appreciate and understand his silence. I found myself doing and saying things he said and did. I, too, discovered strength and love in my family unit through his example and commitment to his own. I discovered that even though he wasn't very religious, he was a man of God and an instrument that he could work through the same way he did through Jesus for the benefit and salvation of those who came after. And on those last few days, when he had nothing left to give, he still managed to muster a joke and a friendly jab, demonstrating his unbelievable heart and character one last time like the true Mexican champion that he was. And as he lay there clinging to life, feeling his spirit beginning to ascend from his body and his heart grow fainter and weaker, his family unit, led by his devoted wife, assembled quietly one last time to cheer him on until he was ready to go for good. The story of Jaime Ramirez may have started humbly and filled with misfortune, but he lived and died a beacon of hope and triumph, a true underdog story and an embodiment of the classic American dream. In a time and place where similar people were lost in the sea of faces, he shattered the mold and rebuilt it in his image with pure grit and determination. To know him was to love him. To love him was to honor him. And to honor him is to live, love, and grind with all your heart like he did for so many years. Father, we will miss you dearly, but today we rejoice in knowing that you need not hurt any longer. We are comforted by our collective belief that you are in the best of company, surrounded by friends and loved ones who went before you. Our souls are soothed, knowing that now you can play 18 billion holes if you'd like on the eternal campo de golf in the glory of God's presence. Thank you so very much for everything. I will never swing a hammer or wield a shovel without feeling eternally grateful for having had the tremendous honor of having been your son. You were, are, and will always remain my hero. We love you, Pop, until we meet again. Thank you very much.